I watched my family's faces freeze when Jake, my sister Melissa's boyfriend of 3 years, pointed at me and said, "Wait, Olivia's your sister. She's my boss." That's when my mother's lavish birthday dinner, which I'd been banned from attending, imploded spectacularly. But the real betrayal started long before. If you're watching this right now, I'd love to know where you're from. This family betrayal story changed my entire life, and if you've ever experienced that gut-wrenching moment when you realise your own blood has been working against you, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, the karma that unfolds in this story is something you won't want to miss. I've always been the black sheep in my family, not because I was rebellious or troublesome, but because I wasn't Melissa. My name is Olivia Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my existence has been defined by not being my perfect younger sister. Growing up in our middle-class neighbourhood in Boston, I was the serious, studious one. Melissa, 4 years younger, was vivacious, charming, and had this effortless way of becoming the centre of attention in any room. Our mother, Diana, now 55, would beam with pride watching Melissa perform at recitals or cheerleading competitions. Our father, Richard, 58, a successful insurance executive, would boast about his little princess to anyone who would listen. I wasn't neglected, exactly. My achievements were acknowledged, good grades, debate team victories, academic scholarships, but always with a subtle undercurrent of, "That's expected from Olivia." When I graduated summa cum laude from college, my father's response was, "Well, you've always had your nose in those books." When Melissa barely scraped through with a C average, there was a lavish party celebrating her perseverance through the challenging college experience. After years of therapy, I'd made peace with this dynamic. I built a successful career as a marketing executive at Meridian Enterprises, one of the top firms in Boston. I had my own condo downtown, a small circle of loyal friends, and I'd learned to limit my family interactions to major holidays and occasional Sunday dinners. It wasn't perfect, but it was a functional equilibrium, until the invitation arrived. It was an elegant cream-coloured envelope with gold embossing, an invitation to my mother's 55th birthday celebration at the Charleston, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. The party was scheduled for Saturday, May 15th. I immediately marked it on my calendar and even bought a new dress for the occasion, a sapphire blue cocktail dress that had cost more than I'd usually spend. I even found the perfect gift, a vintage brooch from the 1960s that matched one my grandmother had, honed, which my mother had always admired. 3 days before the party, my phone rang. It was my father. "Olivia, there's been a change of plans," he said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of barely concealed irritation he often used with me. "What's up, Dad? Do you need me to bring something for Saturday? Actually, your mother and I think it would be better if you didn't attend." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Excuse me?" "We want Diana's birthday to be perfect. You know how these family gatherings go when you're there. There's always some tension, and your mother gets upset." "Dad, I haven't had any conflict with anyone in the family for months," I protested, my voice barely above a whisper. "Well, Melissa mentioned that you two had some words recently, and frankly we don't want any drama. It's your mother's special day." I racked my brain trying to remember any recent argument with Melissa. We'd barely spoken in weeks, aside from a few generic comments on social media. "What are you talking about? What words did Melissa say we had?" My father sighed heavily. "I don't know the details, Olivia. I just know that every time you're around, something happens. Melissa ends up crying, your mother gets upset, and the whole event is ruined. Just sit this one out, okay? Will do. Lunch sometime next week." Before I could respond, he hung up. I sat on my couch, still holding my phone, trying to process what had just happened. I had been uninvited from my own mother's birthday, based on a conflict that never occurred. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. 3 Christmases ago, I arrived at my parents' house to find they'd started dinner 2 hours early because we thought you weren't coming, despite my confirming twice that week. Last Thanksgiving, my contribution to the meal, a complicated recipe I'd spent hours preparing, was accidentally left in the refrigerator, while Melissa's store-bought pie was prominently displayed. At my father's retirement party, my toast was mysteriously struck from the programme while Melissa spoke for 15 minutes. But being explicitly uninvited, that was a new low. I tried calling my mother directly, but my calls went straight to voicemail. I texted, "Mum, is everything okay? Dad says I shouldn't come Saturday." No response. I considered showing up anyway, but ultimately decided against it. If they didn't want me there, forcing my presence would only create the very drama they were accusing me of causing. So I resigned myself to staying home that Saturday night, nursing my hurt feelings with a bottle of wine and a Netflix binge. If only I had known what was really going on behind the scenes. 6 months before the birthday incident, my professional life was thriving in ways my personal life never had. As director of marketing at Meridian Enterprises, I had built a reputation for innovative campaigns and uncompromising standards. My team respected me, our clients trusted me, and for the first time in my life I felt truly valued. The Monday morning that would eventually connect all the dots began like any other. My assistant Tara poked her head into my office. "You're 9. A clock is here," she said. "The new hire for the Stratton account." I nodded, quickly finishing an email. "Send him in." The man who walked through my door was tall, with warm brown eyes and an easy smile. He extended his hand. "Jake Wilson. Thank you for this opportunity, Ms. Bennett." Jake's resume had impressed. Me, experience with major brands, innovative campaign strategies, and glowing recommendations. In person, he was articulate and thoughtful, with none of the arrogance that often came with his level of talent. "Welcome to Meridian," I said after our interview. "I have high expectations for this team, but I also believe in creating an environment where people can do their best work." "I appreciate that," he replied. "I'm looking for a place where I can grow and contribute equally." Over the next few months, Jake proved himself to be everything his resume promised and more. He tackled the challenging Stratton account with fresh ideas that impressed even their notoriously difficult CEO. He collaborated smoothly with the team, always giving credit where it was due. He stayed late when deadlines loomed, but never made a show of his dedication. Our relationship was strictly professional. I maintained appropriate boundaries with all my team members, and Jake respected that. We discussed campaigns, strategies, client needs, and industry trends. Occasionally, we'd chat about neutral topics like the latest Netflix series or Boston's unpredictable weather, but personal lives remained largely private. In March, disaster struck when the Peterson account, our biggest client, threatened to walk after a miscommunication about their campaign timeline. Jake stepped up, working through an entire weekend to develop an alternative strategy that not only appeased Peterson, but excited them enough to increase their budget by 20%. "You saved us," I told him during our debrief. "That was impressive work," he shrugged modestly. "Just doing my job." "Well, your job just got bigger. I'd like to recommend you for a promotion to senior marketing strategist." His eyes widened. "Seriously, that's... Thank you. I won't let you down." "I know you won't." After the Peterson crisis, Jake and I worked more closely together on major accounts. During one late-night strategy session, our conversation drifted briefly into personal territory. "Do you have plans this weekend?" I asked, making small talk while we waited for design mock-ups. "Yeah, actually. It's our 3-year anniversary." "Congratulations," I said. 3 years is significant." He smiled, a soft expression crossing his face. "It's had its challenges, but she's worth it. What about you? Any special plans?" I shook my head. "Just the usual. Maybe catch up on some reading." That was the extent of our personal conversation. Jake never mentioned his girlfriend's name, and I never asked. Professional boundaries were important to me, and after growing up in the shadow of my sister's personal dramas, I appreciated keeping work focused on work. In early May, Jake's promotion became official. The team gathered for a celebratory dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. Champagne flowed, toasts were made, and for once, I allowed myself to relax slightly with my colleagues. During dessert, Jake's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and excused himself. Sorry, I need to take this. As he walked toward the restaurant entrance, I headed to the restroom. Passing by, I couldn't help overhearing his side of the conversation. Hey. Yeah, it's going great. I know, I miss you too. Love you too, Mel. I'll tell you all about it when I get home. Mel. A girlfriend named Mel. The information registered vaguely, but I didn't connect it to anything significant. Why would I? The world was full of women with names that could be shortened to Mel, Melissa, Melanie, Melody. If only I'd made the connection sooner. 2 days before my mother's birthday dinner, from which I'd been explicitly uninvited, I was reviewing emergency contact information for upcoming company retreats. Standard procedure, nothing unusual. Jake's file showed his emergency contact as Melissa Bennett. I stared at the name, my brain refusing to make the obvious connection for several long seconds. Bennett isn't an uncommon surname. There could be thousands of Melissa Bennetts in the world. But how many lived in Boston? How many were dating a marketing professional named Jake Wilson? This is impossible, I whispered to my empty office. I pulled up Jake's personnel file again. His home address was in the South End neighborhood. I knew Melissa had moved there. Last year, after complaining that her previous apartment was too small for entertaining properly. With shaking hands, I opened Instagram on my phone. Melissa and I were connected on social media, though we rarely interacted beyond obligatory. Likes on major life announcements. I scrolled through her recent posts, brunches with friends, shopping trips, gym selfies. There were occasional references to a boyfriend. Date night with my love, or 3 amazing years with this one, but no clear photos of his face. Always. Artfully cropped shots showing clasped hands, a shoulder, the back of a head. I dug deeper, scrolling back months, years. There it was, a group photo from a New Year's party a 1.5 years ago. Melissa in the centre, surrounded by friends, and in the background, partially visible but unmistakable, Jake Wilson. The pieces clicked into horrifying place. My sister had been dating my employee for at least a 1.5 years. Neither had ever mentioned the connection. And now, suddenly, I'd been banned from my mother's birthday right after I'd promoted Jake. This wasn't coincidence. This was sabotage. I called my closest friend, Erin, who'd witnessed the Melissa drama throughout our lives. Am I crazy? I asked after explaining the situation. Am I making connections that aren't there? Olivia, Erin said firmly, you're not crazy. This is exactly the kind of thing Melissa has always done. Remember when she befriended your college roommate, and then suddenly that girl started spreading rumours about you? The memory stung. Jennifer had been my roommate freshman year. We'd been close until Melissa visited for a weekend. After that, Jennifer became distant, then hostile. I later discovered she'd been told I was mocking her behind her back. Or the time she dated your high school boyfriend 2 weeks after you broke up, then made sure everyone knew he liked her better. Another painful memory. Tyler and I had dated for nearly a year when we were 16. After a minor argument, he suddenly broke things off. 2 weeks later, he was with Melissa, who made a point of telling me how he'd always been attracted to her. You think she put Jake up to this? I asked. To what end? I don't know if Jake is in on it, Erin replied. But I'd bet my life savings that Melissa orchestrated him working for you. Think about it. She finally found a good guy, realised. You were successful in your career and decided to insert him into your workplace. Maybe to spy on you, maybe to set up some kind of conflict. It made a twisted kind of sense. Melissa had always been insecure about my academic and professional achievements, even while our parents fawned over her. She'd spent years trying to prove she could succeed in areas where I excelled. So what do? I asked. You go to that birthday dinner, Erin said without hesitation. You walk in with your head high and watch what happens when these two worlds collide. I wasn't invited, remember? Since when has an invitation stopped the truth? After hanging up, I sat in my office for a long time, weighing my options. I could confront Jake at work, but that would bring personal drama into my professional space, something I'd always strived to avoid. I could call my parents and try to explain, but they'd never believed me over Melissa before. Or I could show up at the birthday dinner and let the situation reveal itself. The thought of walking into that restaurant uninvited made my stomach churn. I'd be cast as the villain, the dramatic daughter who couldn't respect boundaries. But the alternative, letting Melissa continue this manipulation unchallenged, was worse. I texted Erin, "I'm going Saturday night, wish me luck." Her response was immediate, "It's about damn time." The next day at work, I observed Jake carefully. Did he know who I was when he applied for the job? Had he been reporting back to Melissa all these months? Was his exemplary work performance genuine, or part of some elaborate scheme? He behaved exactly as he always had, professional, focused, respectful. Either he was an exceptional actor, or he was an unwitting pawn in my sister's game. That night I laid out my sapphire blue dress, the one I'd bought specifically for my mother's birthday, and a pair of silver heels. I'd still give my mother the vintage brooch I'd found. I'd be polite, composed, and absolutely unmovable. For once in my life I wouldn't slink away from my sister's machinations. It was time for the truth. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of perfect May weather that Boston only sees a few weeks each year. The Charleston, with its historic brick facade and discreet entrance, glowed softly in the early evening light. Valets efficiently whisked away luxury vehicles while well-dressed patrons entered through heavy oak doors. I parked my car a block away, giving myself a final moment to reconsider. Was I really going to crash my own mother's birthday dinner? Was the potential revelation worth the inevitable family fallout? The image of Jake's name next to Melissa's on that emergency contact form strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about one dinner. This was about years of manipulation finally coming to light. I walked the block to the Charleston, my heels clicking against the cobblestone sidewalk. Through the restaurant's front window, I could see them, my family gathered around a table laden with fine china and crystal glasses. My mother, elegant in a burgundy dress, laughing at something my father had said. My father, gesturing expressively, with one hand, while the other rested on my mother's shoulder. And there was Melissa, stunning as always in a form-fitting emerald dress, leaning intimately against the man beside her. Jake, my employee, the man I'd just promoted, sitting with my family as though he belonged there. They looked so happy. A perfect family portrait that had no space for me. For a fleeting moment I considered leaving. Let them have their perfect evening. Let Melissa have her secrets. Let my parents continue in their blissful ignorance. But then I saw Jake raise his glass in a toast, saw my family clink their glasses together, celebrating without me based on a lie. I pushed open the heavy door. The maitre d' approached with a practiced smile. "Good evening, madam. Do you have a reservation?" "I'm joining the Bennett party," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. His smile faltered slightly as he consulted his tablet. "I don't see an additional guest listed for the Bennett reservation." "It's fine. I'm family." Before he could object further, I walked past him toward the table in the corner. I was halfway there when my father spotted me. His expression shifted from confusion to anger so quickly it would have been comical under different circumstances. "Olivia," he said as I reached the table, his voice carrying that warning tone I knew so well. "What are you doing here?" "We discussed." "This?" My mother turned, her smile fading. "Oh dear." Melissa smirked slightly, leaning closer to Jake. And then Jake looked up. Our eyes met, and his expression transformed from polite curiosity to shock. "Olivia?" he said, standing abruptly. "What are you doing here?" The table fell silent. My father looked between Jake and me, confusion replacing anger. "You two know each other?" my mother asked. Jake was still staring at me, his face growing increasingly pale. "Ms. Bennett is my boss," he said slowly. "Director of Marketing at Meridian." Now it was Melissa's turn to look shocked. She gripped Jake's arm. "What are you talking about?" Jake looked from me to Melissa, the pieces visibly clicking together in his mind. "Wait," he said, pointing at me. "Olivia's your sister? She's my boss." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's hand flew to her throat. My father's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. Melissa's face drained of colour. I stood there, letting the moment stretch, watching as understanding dawned across each of their faces. "Surprise," I said quietly. "Happy birthday, Mum." I placed the small gift box containing the vintage brooch on the table. Jake was the first to recover. "I don't understand," he said, looking between Melissa and me. "You've talked about your sister for 3 years, but you never mentioned her name was Olivia. You never said she worked at Meridian." Melissa's shock was quickly morphing into something else, the calculated defensiveness I'd seen countless times. "How was I supposed to know where she worked?" she countered. "It's not like we talk." Jake's confusion deepened. "But you told me to apply at Meridian. You sent me the job listing." And there it was, the confirmation I needed. My father finally found his voice. "What the hell is going on here?" The neighbouring tables had gone, quiet, diners pretending not to listen while stealing glances at our family drama unfolding. "I think," I said calmly, "that we have a lot to discuss." A waiter approached nervously. "Is everything all right here?" "No," my mother said, finding her composure, "but it will be. Could we get another chair for my daughter, please?" The look on Melissa's face was worth every ounce of anxiety I'd felt walking into that restaurant. For the first time in our adult lives, she couldn't control the narrative. As I took my seat at the table, I noticed several people at nearby tables glancing our way, some openly watching the family drama unfold. If this were a scene in a movie, now would be the perfect moment for a commercial break. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with one of the fancy steak knives on the table. I couldn't help thinking about everyone watching this unfold. If you've ever been in a situation where family secrets suddenly explode into the open, you know exactly how this feels. That terrible, wonderful moment when the truth finally breaks free. If you're enjoying this family karma story, make sure you hit that like button. Trust me, what happens next changed everything. The waiter returned with an additional chair, placing it awkwardly between my father and Jake. I sat down, smoothing my dress with hands that weren't quite steady. No one spoke as the waiter poured water into my glass and hastily retreated. Jake broke the silence. "I'm completely lost here," he said, looking between Melissa and me. "Someone needs to explain what's happening." My mother dabbed at the corner of her eye with a napkin. "I'd like an explanation as well." Melissa reached for her wineglass. "There's nothing to explain. It's just a coincidence that Jake works for Olivia." Jake stared at her. "A coincidence? Mel, you specifically told me to apply at Meridian. You helped me prepare for the interview. You said your friend worked there and told you they were looking for someone with my qualifications." "I was just trying to help you," Melissa said, her voice rising slightly. "How was I supposed to know Olivia worked there?" "Because you've known where I've worked for the past 5 years," I said quietly. "You attended the company Christmas party with me 2 years ago when Mom had the flu." My father's eyes narrowed. "Melissa, is this true?" "That's not," she began, but Jake cut her off. "Wait a minute," he said, turning to face her fully. "You've always referred to your sister as my stuck-up sister, or my sister who thinks she's better than everyone. You never once mentioned her name was Olivia, or that she worked in marketing." "I talk about a lot of people," Melissa said defensively. "You can't expect me to give full biographies of everyone in my life." "But this is your sister," Jake insisted. "And for 3 years you've made it sound like she's some distant relative you barely see, not someone I interact with daily." My mother was looking increasingly distressed. "Jake, dear, how long have you worked for Olivia?" 6 months, he replied. "And she just promoted me last week. Which," he added with dawning comprehension, "was right before you all uninvited her from this dinner." All eyes turned to my father, who shifted uncomfortably. That can't be related," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Dad," I said, "why exactly did you uninvite me? You said Melissa told you we had words recently. What specifically did she say?" My father looked cornered. She said you two had an argument about what? I pressed. I don't remember exactly, he admitted. Something about you threatening her relationship. Jake's head snapped toward Melissa. Is that what this is about? You told them Olivia was threatening our relationship? Why would you say that? Melissa's composure was cracking. You don't understand. She's always been jealous of me. Always. Trying to take what's mine. What exactly have I taken from you, Melissa? I asked, keeping my voice level despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Everything, she hissed. You were always the smart one, the responsible one. Why can't you be more like Olivia? Olivia would never do that. Even when they gave me everything, they were always comparing me to you. My mother gasped. That's not true. It is true, Melissa insisted. And now she's trying to steal Jake too. Jake looked horrified. Steal? Me? Olivia is my boss. Our relationship has been completely professional. Oh, come on, Melissa scoffed. I've seen how these things work. The powerful female boss seducing her male employee. It's a cliché for a reason. The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. Melissa, I didn't even know Jake was your boyfriend until 2 days ago when I saw your name as his emergency contact. A likely story, she sneered. It's the truth, I said firmly. But what's more interesting is why you never mentioned this. Connection. Why you deliberately kept it from both of us that we knew each other. Why you engineered a situation where your boyfriend would be working for your sister without either of us knowing the relationship. My father was watching Melissa with growing concern. Did you really do that, Melissa? Her eyes darted around the table, seeing that her usual tactics weren't working. I just wanted Jake to get a good job. Meridian is prestigious. It was for his career. But why hide it? My mother asked, her voice trembling slightly. Why not just tell Olivia you were dating someone who wanted to apply at her company? Because she would have sabotaged it, Melissa exclaimed. She's always trying to ruin things for me. Jake was shaking his head slowly. That doesn't make sense. I've worked with Olivia for 6 months. She's been nothing but fair and supportive. You don't know her like I do, Melissa insisted. Actually, Jake said, his voice hardening, I'm starting to think I don't know you like I thought I did. He turned to me. Olivia, Miss Bennett, I swear I had no idea you were Melissa's sister. She's mentioned a sister, but always in vague terms and never by name. I believe you, I said. But I have to ask, has Melissa ever asked you about work, about my projects or clients, or anything specific about me? Jake's expression changed as realization dawned. She asks about work all the time, specific accounts, marketing strategies. His voice trailed off. Oh, God. What? My father demanded. Jake looked sick. She's always especially interested when I talk about new campaign strategies or client acquisitions. She's asked me to show her presentations sometimes. Said she was interested in marketing. My mother put her hand over her mouth. Melissa, you didn't. It's not like that, Melissa said quickly. I was just taking an interest in his career. Is that why your new online boutique's marketing strategy is eerily similar to the campaign we developed for Stratton last month? I asked quietly. Melissa's face flushed. That's absurd. It's basic marketing. Anyone would use those approaches. Jake was staring at her with growing horror. The Stratton campaign used a proprietary algorithm for targeted ads that Olivia developed. It's not basic marketing. It's innovative and specific to Meridian. So what if I got some ideas? Melissa snapped. That's how business works. That's how corporate espionage works, I corrected. And it's potentially illegal, depending on what information you accessed. My father, always concerned with appearances and propriety, looked mortified. Melissa, tell me you didn't use your relationship with Jake to steal business strategies from your sister's company. I didn't steal anything, she insisted. Jake shared things with me because he loves me and wants me to succeed. Jake stood up abruptly. I shared things with you because I trusted you. and because you made me believe you were genuinely interested in my work. I never thought you were using me to spy on your sister, a sister you deliberately kept me from knowing about." The neighbouring tables had long abandoned any pretense of not listening. My mother was quietly crying. My father looked like he might be sick. "I think," I said carefully, "that we need to acknowledge what's really happening here. This isn't about one dinner or one job. This is about a pattern that's been going on our entire lives." "Here we go," Melissa said bitterly. "Saint Olivia always so perfect." "No," I countered. "Not perfect, just honest, and tired of being manipulated and excluded based on lies." "What lies?" my father demanded, clinging to his last shreds of denial. Like the lie that Melissa and I had an argument recently, or the lie that I caused drama at family gatherings, or the lie that I've ever tried to sabotage Melissa's happiness. My mother looked up, tears streaking her makeup. But all those times when Melissa was upset after family gatherings were because I existed, I finished for her. Not because I did anything to her. Jake was looking at Melissa with growing clarity. "The times you've cried after phone calls with your family, you said it was because your sister said cruel things to you. But that wasn't true, was it?" Melissa's mask was slipping. "You don't understand. None of you understand what it's like to live in her shadow." "Her shadow?" my father repeated incredulously. "Melissa, we've given you everything. Your apartment, your car, the seed money for your boutique. We've supported you in every way possible, while always making it clear you were compensating for the fact that I wasn't as smart or successful as Olivia," she shot back. My mother shook her head slowly. "That's not true, sweetheart. We've always been so proud of you." "For what?" Melissa demanded. "What have I ever done that compares to perfect Olivia?" The raw pain in her voice momentarily silenced the table. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of sympathy for my sister. Had she really spent all these years believing she was somehow inadequate? "Melissa," I said gently, "I've spent my entire life feeling like I wasn't enough for this family. That, no matter what I achieved, it didn't matter because I wasn't you." She looked at me in genuine surprise. "That's ridiculous. They adore you." "They respect my achievements," I corrected. "They've never adored me the way they adore you." My parents exchanged troubled glances. Jake was watching this exchange with a thoughtful expression. "I think I'm starting to understand why you never wanted me to meet your family, Mel. It wasn't about keeping me from them. It was about keeping me from Olivia." Melissa didn't deny it. "What I don't understand," he continued, "is why you then orchestrated me working for her. If you were so afraid of us connecting, why put us in daily contact?" My mother looked up sharply. "That's a very good question." Melissa's silence spoke volumes. "You wanted me to fail," I realised aloud. "You placed someone close to you in my department, encouraged him to get close professionally, all so you could, what? Undermine my work? Steal my ideas? Wait for me? To make a mistake?" "I wanted you to know what it feels like," Melissa burst out. "To have someone take what's yours, to feel like you're not special anymore." The raw honesty of her outburst left us all momentarily speechless. Jake broke the silence. "So our entire relationship has been what? A long con to get back at your sister?" "No," Melissa said quickly, reaching for his hand. "No, Jake, I love you. That's real." He withdrew his hand. "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been using me as a pawn in some twisted sibling rivalry. You've been lying to me for 3 years." "Not about us," she insisted. "Never about us." But the damage was done. 3 years of trust had evaporated in 30 minutes of truth. My mother's birthday dinner was officially ruined. But for the first time in decades, our family was having an honest conversation. As the initial shock began to subside, my father ordered a round of drinks. "I think we all need this," he said grimly. No one disagreed. Jake had moved his chair slightly away from Melissa, creating a physical distance that mirrored the emotional chasm that had opened between them. My mother was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin, careful not to smudge her makeup further. This isn't just about tonight, I said after the waiter had delivered our drinks and retreated. This is about a pattern that's been happening since we were children. What pattern? My father asked defensively. We've always treated you girls equally. Jake looked sceptical, but remained silent, an outsider witnessing our family's unravelling. Dad, I said gently, I don't think you've ever treated us equally, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Melissa's pattern of sabotage. Melissa rolled her eyes. Here we go with the victim narrative. Should we talk about what happened with my Harvard application? I asked her directly. She paled slightly but maintained her defiant expression. What about Harvard? My mother asked. I took a deep breath. This was a wound I'd never fully exposed to my parents. Senior year, I was waitlisted at Harvard, my dream school. I never understood why, since my grades and extracurriculars were strong. Then, the summer after graduation, Mrs. Patel from next door mentioned how sad she was that I'd withdrawn my application. My father frowned. But you didn't withdraw your application. Exactly, I said. Someone called the admissions office, pretending to be me, and withdrew my application. They used my social security number and other personal details as verification. My mother gasped. That can't be true. I called Harvard to confirm. They had a record of the call. I looked directly at Melissa. It came from our house, on a day when I was at debate nationals. Only Melissa was home. Melissa's face had gone completely white. Did you do that? My father asked her, his voice dangerously quiet. After a long moment, she nodded almost imperceptibly. She was going to leave, she whispered. Everyone was so proud. Olivia's going to Harvard, and I'd be left behind, forgotten. My mother made a sound like she'd been wounded. Melissa, how could you? It worked out fine, Melissa said defensively. She went to Boston University and did great. That's not the point, my father said, his voice shaking with anger. You deliberately sabotaged your sister's future. It wasn't the only time, I said quietly. Jake, who had been listening in stunned silence, looked at me. There's more. I nodded. Remember Tyler Bradley, Mum? My high school boyfriend. My mother nodded slowly. Of course, you two were so sweet together. Then you had that sudden breakup. It wasn't sudden, and it wasn't my choice, I said. Tyler came to me one day saying he couldn't see me anymore. He wouldn't explain why. 2 weeks later, he was dating Melissa. They were better suited, my mother said weakly. They dated for 3 weeks, I countered. It made no sense until years later when I ran into Tyler at a college alumni event. He told me the truth. Melissa had shown him fake diary entries she claimed were mine, where I supposedly wrote terrible things about him and confessed to cheating. My father turned to Melissa. Is this true? Melissa stared at her wine glass. We were teenagers. Everyone does stupid things as teenagers. Not like that, Jake said, speaking up for the first time in a while. That's calculated cruelty. There was also the family business opportunity, I continued, the floodgates now open. Remember when Grandpa was looking to bring someone from the next generation into his consulting firm? I expressed interest, but suddenly he changed his mind, after hearing concerns about my work ethic. My father shifted uncomfortably. Dad mentioned something about you not being reliable. I'd never missed a deadline in my life, I said. But somehow rumours spread that I was flaky and uncommitted, rumours that, coincidentally, Melissa was well positioned to contradict, but didn't. You wouldn't have been happy there anyway, Melissa muttered. That wasn't your decision to make, I replied. What about the trust fund? Jake asked suddenly. We all turned to look at him. What trust fund? My father asked. Jake looked confused. The one from your grandparents. Melissa mentioned they changed their will to exclude Olivia because she was disrespectful to them. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Mum and Dad's educational trust, but that was divided equally. Not according to what Melissa told me, Jake said. She said Olivia was cut out completely. All eyes turned to Melissa, who was now visibly squirming. "I may have exaggerated some things," she admitted. "You told Jake I was cut out of our grandparents' will." I asked, genuinely shocked despite everything else I'd learned. I needed him to understand why there was tension in the family. By making up lies about me? "They're not all lies," she insisted. "You have always thought you're better than me. You've always had this air of superiority." "I've spent my entire life walking on eggshells around you," I countered, downplaying my achievements so you wouldn't feel bad, accepting blame for conflicts you started, making myself smaller to protect your feelings. Jake was watching Melissa with growing disillusionment. "So when you told me Olivia stole your boyfriend in college, that was a lie," I confirmed. "I've never dated anyone Melissa was interested in." "And when you said she deliberately embarrassed you at your parents' anniversary party, also a lie. I wasn't even there. I had food poisoning." Jake turned to Melissa. "Have you been creating this fictional villain version of your sister our entire relationship?" Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand. She's always been the perfect one." "No, I haven't," I said firmly. "I've just been me, working hard, trying to build a life, and constantly being painted as the bad guy in a story I wasn't even aware was being written." My mother was openly crying now. "All these years, all those family gatherings where you two couldn't seem to get along, it was because of these lies." "Not lies," Melissa protested, "just different perspectives. Fabricating diary entries isn't a different perspective," Jake said coldly. "It's manipulation. Calling Harvard to withdraw your sister's application isn't a different perspective. It's sabotage." My father had been uncharacteristically quiet. Now he looked at Melissa with an expression I'd never seen before. Disappointment mingled with dawning comprehension. "All those times you came to us upset about something Olivia supposedly did or said," he said slowly. "Were any of those real?" Melissa didn't answer, which was answer enough. "And we believed you," my mother whispered. "Every time, without question, without even asking Olivia for her side. Because she was your favourite," I said quietly. It was easier to believe I was the problem than to consider Melissa might be lying. "That's not why," my father started, then stopped. He looked at my mother, some unspoken communication passing between them. "Then why?" I asked. My mother took a deep breath. "Because Melissa needed us more. At least we thought she did. You were always so capable, so independent. Melissa seemed more fragile." "I manufactured that fragility," Melissa admitted suddenly, surprising us all. "I learned early on that being emotional got me attention. Being wounded by Olivia made you both rally around me." The brutal honesty of her statement hung in the air. "And I let it happen," my father said heavily, "because it was easier than admitting I didn't know how to connect with my oldest daughter." The admission hit me like a physical blow. All these years I'd thought the distance between us was my failure somehow. Jake stood up abruptly. "I need some air." He walked toward the restaurant entrance without looking back. Melissa half rose to follow him, then sank back into her chair. "I think he needs some space," I said gently. "This is your fault," she hissed, the vulnerability of moments ago replaced by familiar anger. "You've ruined everything." "No, Melissa," my father said firmly. "This time you can't blame your sister. This is the consequence of your own actions." The birthday dinner my mother had so looked forward to was now a tangle of painful revelations and shattered illusions. The perfectly frosted cake sitting untouched at the side of the table seemed like a mockery of celebration. Jake returned. After several minutes, his expression composed but distant. "I apologize for walking out," he said formally. "This has been illuminating." "Jake," Melissa began, reaching for his hand. He gently but firmly moved his hand away. "Not now, Mel. I need time to process all of this. My mother, always the peacemaker, attempted to salvage something from the evening. Perhaps we should order dessert. The cake looks lovely. No one had the heart to tell her that cake and candles couldn't fix what had been broken here tonight. The morning after my mother's disastrous birthday dinner, I arrived at work earlier than usual. The weekend's revelations had left me with insomnia, and I'd spent most of the night mapping out professional contingency plans. I was reviewing the employee handbook section on conflicts of interest when there was a knock at my office door. Jake stood there looking as tired as I felt. "May I come in?" he asked formally. I nodded, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. The atmosphere was strained. We'd moved from boss and employee to unwitting participants in a family drama, and neither of us seemed sure how to navigate this new territory. "I want to apologize," he began. I shook my head. "You have nothing to apologize for, Jake. From what I can tell, you were as much in the dark as I was. Still, I should have realized something was off. Melissa always changed the subject when I talked about you, my boss. She never wanted to see photos from company events. She discouraged me from attending optional team gatherings." He ran, a hand through his hair. "In retrospect, the signs were there." "We see what we expect to see," I said. "I never connected Mel to my sister either." We sat in silence for a moment, the professional distance between us both a comfort and a challenge in this unprecedented situation. "We need to discuss the practical implications," I finally said, slipping into business mode because it felt safer than personal territory. "Meridian has strict policies about conflicts of interest and disclosure requirements." Jake nodded grimly. "I've reviewed the handbook. Section 4.3 covers romantic relationships that create supervisory conflicts, but there's nothing specific about family relationships." "True, but Section 5.2 requires disclosure of any relationship that could potentially affect business decisions or create the appearance of impropriety." "I would have disclosed it if I'd known," Jake said earnestly. "I had no idea who you were in relation to Melissa." "I believe you," I assured him. "But now that we do know, we have to address it. Your recent promotion was based on merit," he finished firmly. "I earned that promotion with the Peterson account, save, and my work on the Stratton campaign." "I know that, and you know that, but others might question it." Jake's expression darkened. "Because I'm dating the boss's sister." "Exactly. And there's the matter of confidential information. You mentioned Melissa asked about presentations and strategies." He looked genuinely distressed. "I never thought... I showed her some basic marketing concepts. I talked about campaigns after they'd launched. I never intentionally shared proprietary information." "But Melissa may have gleaned more than you realized," I said gently. "Her boutique's marketing approach mirrors our Stratton strategy in ways that can't be coincidental." Jake put his head in his hands. "I feel like such an idiot." "You're not an idiot. You trusted someone you loved." He looked up at me, his expression pained. "I don't even know if I actually know her. The Melissa I thought I was in love with and the person I saw last night, they seem like different people." I felt a pang of sympathy. Despite my complicated history with Melissa, I could see Jake was genuinely hurt. "People are complex. The Melissa you know probably is real in many ways." "Maybe," he said uncertainly. "But where do we go from here? Professionally, I mean." I'd been considering this question all night. "I think the most appropriate action is to transfer you to another department. You're too valuable to lose, but having you report directly to me now creates complications." "I understand," he said, looking relieved. "Digital marketing has an opening for a senior strategist. Same level, different reporting structure." "That could work," I agreed. "I'll speak with HR today." "What about..." He hesitated. "What about the potential intellectual property concerns with Melissa's business?" It was a thorny question. If Melissa had indeed stolen proprietary marketing strategies, the company would have grounds for legal action. But pursuing that would destroy any chance of healing our family relationships, not to mention potentially damaging Jake's career by association. "For now," I said carefully, I think we document the similarities and consult with legal on a confidential basis. No action unless necessary. He nodded gratefully. And us? Working here together after everything? We're professionals, I said simply. We focus on our work and maintain appropriate boundaries. As if on cue, my phone rang. The display showed Timothy Vaughan, our CEO. I should take this, I said, reaching for the phone. Jake stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Olivia, you're nothing like the person Melissa described all these years. You're fair, supportive, and exactly the kind of leader I respect. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. Thank you, Jake. After he left, I answered the call. Timothy didn't waste time on pleasantries. Olivia, I heard about an incident last night involving you, one of your direct reports, and your family. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course, news had travelled. Boston's business community was smaller than it seemed. Yes, Tim, it was an unfortunate situation, but I'm already taking steps to address any potential conflicts. My wife was at the Charleston last night, he continued. She overheard enough to be concerned about potential confidentiality breaches. I outlined the situation as objectively as possible, including my plan to transfer Jake to another department, and consult with legal about any proprietary information that might have been compromised. Good, Tim said when I finished. This could have been a significant issue. I appreciate your proactive handling. Of course. One more thing, Olivia. Family complications aside, how's Wilson's performance been? Excellent, I said without hesitation. He's talented, dedicated, and has exceptional creative instincts. Then let's make sure this situation doesn't derail his career, or yours. After the call ended, I leaned back in my chair, suddenly exhausted. The professional fallout seemed manageable, at least for now, but the personal fallout. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Can we talk, please? Another from Melissa. You've ruined my life. Again. And a third from my father. I owe you an apology. Lunch tomorrow? 24 hours ago, I'd been excluded from my mother's birthday dinner. Now, I was at the centre of a family reckoning 30 years in the making. I texted my mother back. Yes, we can talk. Then my father. Lunch works. Your office? I left Melissa's message unanswered. Some wounds needed time before they could even begin to heal. 3 days after the birthday dinner revelation, my parents asked me to come to their house for dinner. Just the four of us, my parents, Melissa, and me. I agreed with trepidation, unsure if we were gathering to heal or to further fracture. The family home looked the same as always, a stately colonial in a quiet suburb, with my mother's carefully tended roses lining the front walkway. But it felt different now, like returning to a familiar stage set where the script had suddenly changed. My father answered the door, his usual confidence subdued. Olivia, thank you for coming. The formality in his voice spoke volumes about his discomfort. Inside, my mother was arranging flowers in the dining room. She looked up when I entered, her smile strained but genuine. You came? She said, as though she'd half expected me to change my mind. I said I would, I replied simply. Melissa was already seated at the table, staring at her phone. She barely glanced up when I entered. Jake broke up with me, she said without preamble. Are you happy now? Melissa, my father warned. What? It's true. 3 years gone because of her. Because of the truth, I corrected gently, not because of me. My mother finished with the flowers and took her seat. Please, let's try to have a civil conversation. We have a lot to discuss. The dinner my mother had prepared, roast chicken with all the traditional sides, was her standard peace offering. No one had much appetite, but we went through the motions of serving and eating, the familiar ritual providing some structure to an otherwise uncomfortable gathering. How is work? My father asked, attempting normalcy. Complicated, I admitted, but manageable. Jake's being transferred to another department. He said he's considering leaving Meridian entirely, Melissa said bitterly. starting fresh somewhere else. The implication that this was somehow my fault hung in the air. That would be his choice, I said evenly, though I hope he doesn't. He's talented. Oh, I know all about how much you appreciate his talents, Melissa muttered. Enough, my father said sharply. Melissa, we're not here to cast more blame. We're here to understand how we got to this point and how we move forward. My mother set down her fork. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few days about patterns I didn't see, or chose not to see. Her voice wavered slightly. Olivia, I owe you an apology. We all do. The simple acknowledgement nearly undid me. After decades of being the family scapegoat, hearing my mother admit fault was both vindicating and deeply sad. Why? I asked softly. Why was it so easy to believe the worst of me? To always take Melissa's side without question? My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. It started before you can remember, my mother began hesitantly. When Melissa was born, I had severe postpartum depression. I couldn't bond with her, couldn't even look at her some days. This was news to me. My mother had never mentioned postpartum. Depression. You were 4, she continued, and you were so good with her, so natural. You'd sing to her, show her your toys. You connected with her in ways I couldn't. I felt like a failure, she admitted. My 4-year-old daughter was a better mother to my baby than I was. By the time I got proper treatment and began to bond with Melissa, she was almost 2, and there was already this guilt, this need to compensate for those early months. My father picked up the thread. We overcompensated, praised her excessively, excused behaviours we shouldn't have. Whenever there was conflict between you two, it was easier to ask you, the more mature one, to accommodate her than to enforce consequences for Melissa. You enabled her, I said, the pieces falling into place. We did, my father admitted, and over time it became a pattern none of us knew how to break. Melissa had been silent during this exchange, but now she looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You think I don't know, that I was the family project? Poor Melissa, we have to handle her carefully. We have to make sure she feels special. That's not, my mother began. It is, Melissa interrupted. I always knew something wasn't right, that your love came with this undercurrent of worry, like you were waiting for me to break. We never thought you would break, my father said gently. No? Then why did you never hold me accountable? Why did you always believe me over Olivia? It wasn't because you loved me more, it was because you thought I was damaged. The raw honesty in her voice silenced us all. And the thing is, she continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, maybe I am. Because what kind of person does the things I've done? Who sabotages their own sister? Who lies to the man they love for years? For the first time I saw genuine remorse in my sister's eyes, unobscured by defensiveness or blame. You're not damaged, Melissa, I said carefully. But you have been shaped by patterns that none of us recognized until now. Your sister is right, my father said. We failed both of you. We failed to give Melissa appropriate boundaries and consequences, and we failed to give Olivia the validation and support she deserved. My mother reached across the table, tentatively, placing her hand over mine. Can you forgive us, Olivia? The question hung in the air, heavy with decades of hurt and misunderstanding. I'm trying, I said honestly. It's not going to happen overnight, but I want to move forward, not stay stuck in old patterns. Melissa looked at me, really looked. At me, perhaps for the first time in years. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted. I don't even know if it can be fixed. It starts with truth, I said. No more lies, no more manipulation. I'm seeing a therapist, she offered almost shyly. Started yesterday. She says I have issues with insecurity and validation-seeking behaviours. It was a small step, but a significant one for someone who had always deflected responsibility. That's good, I said sincerely. It takes courage to look at yourself honestly. Your Uncle Thomas called me this morning, my father said, changing the subject slightly. Apparently Aunt Sarah has been trying to tell us for years that she observed concerning patterns in how Melissa interacted with you. We always dismissed her concerns as sibling rivalry. Aunt Sarah always did see through my act, Melissa acknowledged, with a hint of her old self-awareness. Others have too, my mother added. We just weren't ready to listen. The conversation continued well into the evening, painful but necessary. Old hurts were acknowledged, patterns identified, apologies offered. It wasn't a magical healing, too much damage had been done for that, but it was a beginning. As the evening wound down, my father poured small glasses of the aged Scotch he reserved for significant occasions. To truth, he said, raising his glass. However uncomfortable it may be. We clinked glasses, this broken family taking its first tentative steps toward honesty. I can't promise I'll never mess up again, Melissa said as we prepared to leave, but I'm going to try, really try. That's all any of us can do, I replied. As I drove home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years, not because everything was fixed. It wasn't and might never be completely, but because the weight of unacknowledged truth had finally been lifted. The family I'd grown up in would never be the same. But perhaps the family we might become would be healthier, more honest and ultimately more loving than the one built on illusions and unspoken pain. 1 month after the revelation at my mother's birthday dinner, I sat at my desk reviewing the quarterly marketing projections. The initial chaos had settled into a new normal, different, challenging, but in many ways more authentic than what had come before. Jake had decided to stay at Meridian, accepting the transfer to digital marketing. We maintained a cordial professional relationship, nodding in hallways and exchanging pleasantries at company meetings. There was an unspoken understanding between us, two people who had been unwittingly drawn into a complex family drama and were now finding their way back to solid ground. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Diana's birthday dinner, take 2, 7 p.m. My mother had decided she wanted a do-over birthday celebration, smaller, more intimate, and focused on healing rather than appearances. Just family at her favourite local Italian restaurant, rather than the upscale Charleston. As I gathered my things to leave the office, my phone rang. It was Melissa. Our relationship over the past month had been cautious, text messages rather than calls, careful conversations about neutral topics. She was continuing therapy, and I'd gone with her to one session at her therapist's suggestion. It had been difficult but productive. Hey, I answered. Are you coming tonight? She asked without preamble. Yes, I'll be there. 7 o'clock at Salvatore's. Good, she said, then paused. I wanted to tell you something before dinner. I've decided to rebrand my boutique. New name, new marketing approach. My own approach, not borrowed concepts. It was a significant concession from Melissa, an acknowledgement of past wrongs without the defensiveness that had characterized our interactions for so long. That's a good decision, I said. I'm happy to give you some general marketing advice if you'd like. As your sister, not as a competitor. I'd like that, she said softly. See you tonight. The dinner that evening was noticeably different from my mother's original birthday celebration. The conversation was sometimes awkward, occasionally strained, but fundamentally honest. My father didn't dominate with stories of his business prowess. My mother didn't fuss excessively over Melissa. And Melissa didn't perform her usual role of charming, attention-seeking daughter. We were just 4 people, connected by blood and shared history, trying to forge a healthier path forward. I have something for you, my mother said, as dessert was served. She handed me a small wrapped package. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 4 small charms, a book, a paintbrush, a star, and a heart. The book is for your intelligence, she explained. The paintbrush for your creativity. The star for your achievements. And the heart. Her voice faltered slightly. The heart is for forgiveness. If you can find it in yours to truly forgive us. It's beautiful, Mom, I said, genuinely touched. And I'm working on the forgiveness part, every day. My father cleared his throat. Your mother and I have been doing some reflection on our parenting. We've realised how much we failed you, Olivia, by not seeing the patterns that were happening right in front of us. And how we failed Melissa, my mother added, by not giving her the structure and accountability she needed. Melissa looked uncomfortable, but didn't contradict them. We can't change the past, my father continued, but we can commit to being more mindful going forward. It was strange hearing my parents speak this way, with vulnerability and self-awareness that had been absent throughout my childhood. The family therapy sessions they'd begun attending were clearly having an impact. The following week, I received an invitation to a family gathering at my Aunt Sarah's lake house. In the past, I would have automatically accepted, regardless of my own plans or preferences. This time I considered it carefully. I had meetings scheduled that weekend that would be difficult to rearrange. More importantly, I was learning to establish boundaries, to make decisions based on my own needs rather than family expectations. I called my father to decline. I won't be able to make it to Aunt Sarah's, I explained. I have work commitments that weekend. I braced myself for guilt or pressure, the usual tactics that would have made me reconsider in the past. Instead, my father simply said, "We'll miss you, but I understand. Work is important. Perhaps next time." It was a small moment, but significant, evidence that our family dynamics were indeed shifting. My relationship with Melissa remained complicated. There were moments of connection, like when she asked my advice about her rebranding strategy, and moments of tension, when old patterns threatened to re-emerge. But there was also a new honesty between us that made even the difficult interactions more authentic. Jake and I maintained our professional distance at work, but occasionally I would catch him looking at me with a thoughtful expression, as though he was still processing everything that had happened. One day, he stopped by my office with a question about a former client. "The Peterson account," he said. "Did you keep any of the original concept sketches? Digital marketing is pitching something similar for a new client, and I wanted to reference the early work." "I should have them in archives," I replied, pulling up the relevant files on my computer. As I sent him the materials, he lingered in my doorway. "How are things?" he asked. "With your family, I mean." "Different," I said after considering the question. "Not perfect, but more honest." He nodded. "That's good. Honesty is important." "How are you doing?" I asked, genuinely concerned for this man who had been caught in the crossfire of my family's dysfunction. "Getting there," he said with a small smile. "Some days are better than others, but I'm glad I stayed at Meridian. The work still matters to me." "I'm glad you stayed too," I told him. "You're an asset to the company." After he left, I reflected on how strangely interconnected our lives had become. Jake wasn't just my employee or my sister's ex-boyfriend. He was a person who had witnessed one of the most pivotal moments in my family's history. There would always be a unique connection there, though I suspected it would remain primarily professional. That evening, I met Erin for dinner at our favourite restaurant. She'd been my sounding board throughout this entire ordeal, offering perspective and support when family entanglements became overwhelming. "So," she said as we settled in with our wine, "1 month later, how's the Bennett family drama?" "Evolving," I said with a small smile. "We're all trying. Some days are better than others." "And Melissa, still playing the victim?" I considered the question. "Less so. The therapy seems to be helping. She's taking more responsibility for her actions." Erin looked sceptical. "People don't change that easily, Liv, especially not someone with Melissa's track record. I'm not expecting a complete transformation," I assured her. "Just progress. And I'm being cautious, setting boundaries." "Good," Erin said firmly, "because you deserve better than what that family has given you all these years." Her loyalty warmed me, but I found myself offering a more nuanced perspective than I might have a month ago. "They're flawed," I acknowledged, We all are, but at least now we're being honest about it. That's worth something. As I drove home that night, I reflected on how much had changed in just 1 month. The family that had excluded me from a birthday dinner was now working, imperfectly but genuinely, to build more honest relationships. The sister who had sabotaged me for decades was confronting her own insecurities and behaviours, and I was learning that family loyalty isn't an automatic obligation. It must be earned through trust, respect, and truth. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Decades of dysfunctional patterns couldn't be undone in weeks or even months. There would be setbacks, moments when old wounds reopened or new conflicts emerged. But for the first time in my life, I felt hopeful about my family relationships, not because they were perfect, but because they were finally real. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone chimed with a text from my mother. "Thank you for being patient with us as we learn to do better. Love you." Simple words, but ones that would have been unimaginable just months ago. I texted back, "One day at a time, love you too." And that was the truth. Not the happily ever after of fairy tales, but the complex, challenging, rewarding truth of a family finally brave enough to see itself clearly. If there's one thing I've learned through this entire experience, it's that family karma eventually catches up to everyone. The lies, the manipulation, the years of being cast as the villain in my own family story. All of it finally came to light in one unexpected moment when my sister's boyfriend recognized me as his boss. Have you ever experienced a moment when family secrets suddenly exploded into the open? Or found yourself vindicated after years of being misunderstood? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this family journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics and finding your own truth. And if you know someone who might be struggling with similar family issues, sharing this video could help them realize they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the most painful family revelations can ultimately lead to healing if we're brave enough to face the truth.